Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today I'm going to be talking about how change comes through empowerment. This week's episode features an organization called Rise Colorado, which focuses on working to educate, engage, and empower families in Aurora, Colorado, in order to make those families the change agents to create the educational equity that they want to see in their school systems. The organization partners with schools in Aurora to ensure that teachers understand how they can best serve their low-income families and families of color. However, at the same time, Rise supports Aurora families to find their own agency to make change and shape the school system so that their children's educational needs are being met. I had the chance to speak with Veronica Crespin Palmer, who is one of the founders of Rise Colorado, about the process behind creating and the mission of her organization. Veronica is a proud Colorado native, but growing up as a student in the Denver public school system, she was often one of the only students of color in her honors and AP classes. After graduating, Veronica enrolled at CU Boulder, SCO Buffs, and became very involved on campus, even becoming the school's first Latina student body president her senior year. After graduating, she got placed to teach elementary school students in Los Angeles through Teach for America. It was in this environment that Veronica began to realize the importance of families in this country's education system. Veronica founded Rise in 2012 after returning to Colorado and has committed herself to empowering families to be the change they want to see in Aurora Public Schools, not only for their own children, but for generations of families to come. I asked Veronica to tell me about the mission of Rise Colorado, and this was her response.
So our mission at Rise Colorado is to educate, engage, and empower low-income families of color to rise as change agents for educational equity in our public school system. And our theory of change is that those most impacted by the inequity that exists must lead the movement for change themselves. So just like Dr. King and African Americans led the civil rights movement, and Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez led the farm workers movement, we must ask ourselves who's most impacted by educational inequity. It's low-income families and families of color, therefore they must lead the movement for educational equity because of what we learned from past social justice movements. And so we at Rise really work hard to, again, educate, engage, and empower low-income families of color for them to be the change agents. And we also look at history, and the most successful social justice movements in the world have not only told us that those most impacted must lead, but that there also must be a really strong, authentic community organizing component to each successful social justice movement. So we at Rise really believe in the importance of bringing authentic community organizing to the movement for educational equity that is family-led, family-driven, family-created, with no preconceived agendas, but for families to achieve what they must so that their children receive the excellent education they deserve. So we teach families the skills and tools of community organizing, just like the skills and tools of community organizing they use in the civil rights movement, in the farm workers movement, so that families are really driving the changes they need. Because we believe in and trust families. We know families are most proximate to the challenges they face. Therefore, they have the best ideas and solutions to how to solve those challenges. And so that's something we really work hard in the education system is how do we change mindsets? There's a lot of pervasive mindsets that low-income families of color don't care, they're too busy, they don't value education. That's absolutely not true. When people say that, I'm like, who are you talking about? Because every family I know cares deeply about their children and their child's education and wants to be involved. It's just that the system is set up in a way to where we tell families when to show up, how to show up, and why to show up. And that's not culturally responsive. Families feel disenfranchised and marginalized by that approach. So how do we meet families where they're at and ask them, how do you want to be engaged in your child's education? And really see families as the experts and leaders they are, and asking them to partner with the education system so the education system is no longer doing things to families or for families, but with families. Because at Rise, we really believe that we have to teach families how to fish for themselves and not fish for them. And that families are capable leaders, incredibly powerful, and that they are the ones to lead the system with us alongside and behind them as allies.
Rise is unique in the way that they train families to advocate for their own needs, as well as training teachers to better assist and meet those needs. This is the inside-outside model, and it serves to empower families to lead rather than to rely on Rise to advocate in schools on their behalf. I asked Veronica to tell me more about Rise Colorado's programming, and she told me about the assistance they provide to families, as well as to teachers and staff in the Aurora public school system.
We at Rise have an inside-outside model. It's unique, and we're one of very few organizations in the nation working at the intersection of community organizing, systems change, and educational equity with multiracial, multilingual families. So again, we work with Black, Latinx, immigrant, and refugee families, and we work in Aurora, which is the most diverse school district and city in the state. And we have families from over 130 countries speaking over 160 different languages, which is beautiful. That diversity is beautiful to be celebrated, acknowledged, and to be proud of. So in our inside-outside model, we work in the school system to support with capacity building and to support with the schools and the school system to understand the best practices in family and community engagement so that they're reaching more families and being more culturally responsive and race conscious in terms of how they're engaging and supporting families, knowing that families are a unit of change. When families feel supported, seen, heard, and valued, they show up and they want to be, deeply involved in the system and for their child's education. But we have to remember that there's a deep history of injustice, of racism, of inequity, where families have had their own traumatic experience in the education system, especially our low-income families of color, and they're afraid to get back involved, to be traumatized again, or, they're still feeling hurt and frustration. So we work with educators to really understand the importance of family and community engagement, but to do it in race conscious and culture responsive and relevant ways. And we have professional development for educators to talk about bias, to talk about culture responsive curriculum and best practices in teaching. And again, to look at their own biases in the classroom. And then we also host workshops in schools where we're teaching teachers about how to share data, how to be very transparent about what is happening in that school. Are children on grade level? Are they behind? And then how can families partner with the school and the education system to improve that academic achievement? Because data is knowledge and knowledge is power. And once families know how their children are faring in school, if they're on grade level, if they're behind grade level, if they need to participate in enrichment or tutoring, once families know that, families are ready to advocate and access those opportunities. But if families don't know how their child is faring or how the whole class or school is faring, they don't know how to help. So we teach teachers how to share data so that families know how their children are doing. And then we also teach families how to navigate the school system and how the school system works. Because again, we're working with a lot of immigrant and refugee families where the U.S. education system is brand new to them. They have no idea how it works. Even our own families who are Latinx and Black family leaders who have been in the U.S., navigating the school system is new for them. And not many have taken the time to actually sit down and explain the school system and how to navigate it and explain the data. So many times we heard from families that we know something's going on, but nobody's told us exactly. So we break down the opportunity gap and academic achievement from a national to a state to a local level. So families really understand what educational inequity looks like at a systemic level. And then we find that families are the sleeping giant. Once families are awakened to the inequities that exist in the education system, there's nothing they won't do to ensure that their children receive the excellent education they deserve. So it's really to awaken families about what's happening. And many families know. So then providing them with the skills, tools, and strategies so they can share the challenges they're facing, create the solutions, and really partner and co-create and collaborate with the school district and their individual schools to create and reimagine the education system so that could become an incredible education experience for all of our children and not just for some children.
Rise Colorado's approach to combating educational inequity makes so much sense, and it's really, really simple when you boil it down. Parents want the best for their children, so Rise provides them with the data to inform them about the inequities and helps to open the door for a conversation between the schools and the families. This process then allows parents to become leaders in their own communities and creates a regenerative system of change in the future. This inside-outside model that Rise practices empowers families to advocate for their own needs while lifting other families in their community up, rather than relying on the government or the people at the top to create the change for them. Because, as we've seen throughout history, change doesn't come when you wait for others to fight against injustice for you, and change also doesn't come exclusively from the top down either. Change comes when you teach a person to fish rather than giving them a fish. So, investing in families of color and low-income families is an important step toward ending educational inequities in America, because change comes through empowerment. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can connect with Rise Colorado on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Rise Colorado. For more information about Rise Colorado, check out their website, which is linked in the description of this episode. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at bethechangepodcast. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys!